At Oklahomans for Criminal Justice Reform, we bring clarity to how policy shapes real lives across Oklahoma. And this is Unintended Consequences. This podcast is about what happens after decisions are made. Not what is intended, but what actually happens in people's lives and communities. In a state with one of the highest incarceration rates in the country, those outcomes matter. We'll be talking with people who have lived experiences and with leaders and organizations working on the ground in the communities across Oklahoma. Each episode, we'll take a closer look at the patterns, what the data shows, and what it means, and how it connects to stability. Because when we understand the full impact of our decisions, we have an opportunity to build something stronger. We're so excited to be here with you today. We have an amazing guest, Meagan Taylor, Executive Director for the Diversion Hub in Oklahoma City. And I'm just gonna jump on into this, Meagan. I'm just so excited to have you. I've had the opportunity to work with you in the work that you're doing in Oklahoma City. What I love about the Diversion Hub, not only is it setting a tone in Oklahoma City, but it's setting a tone across this nation, because you all are doing the most, and you all have taken all the models. And I don't want to give up all the good stuff before. I want you to talk about that stuff. So who is Meagan Taylor? Tell us a little about her and how you got to Diversion Hub.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. I'm incredibly honored to be here and to talk about the work we're doing at Diversion Hub, talk about the opportunity for system level change within the criminal legal system. And so I am just Meagan Taylor. I started my career as an assistant district attorney under Mr. Prater and now Judge Rowland. And I really took that time and that start of my career to learn the criminal justice system from within, use that opportunity as a public servant to try to do good and help people. Cycles have previously been broken in my family, and so how do I take this opportunity to break cycles of incarceration and poverty and trauma and harm? Being an assistant district attorney for several years, I was able to work really close to some of the issues within the criminal justice system, but also some of the things at work. I had the opportunity to end my career in the district attorney's office within the Oklahoma County Treatment Courts. These are incredible programs that change the trajectory for thousands of Oklahomans. It was also an amazing time for me to learn from experts and work with mentors such as Judge Stoner, work with Mr. Ravitz, the new Chief Public Defender, Bridget Biffle. And so I credit a lot of what we do today at Diversion Hub from the expertise working directly with stakeholders that work within the system, but also most importantly, individuals and families impacted. So Meagan Taylor's just a lawyer who wants to help people and change the criminal justice system. And really our focus and our lane for that is within the services, the resources, the advocacy, and then to allow those stories and those outcomes and the positive impact that, helping people has within public safety, and really elevating that up to agencies such as the one that you run to get better and broader impact change within criminal justice. So yeah, that's Meagan Taylor. I'm just a normal person, and I've got an amazing team.
It
So
is so much in just who is Meagan Taylor that just makes me smile. You talked about the Judge Stoners of the world, but one person you talked about is Bob Ravitz, which is
yes, sir.
just his heart was good, and his
Oh yeah,
heart was for people. He wanted better, and so just we miss him.
we miss him for
And let me
sure.
just tell you, he was impactful to my life, and just not because I worked in the public defender's office, just I knew that I could always get a real answer, and he worked
Oh,
hard.
yeah.
He and his staff worked hard for those people, and so I
Oh,
just
yeah.
had to take that personal moment, just because
Yeah.
that just makes me smile when I hear somebody bring up his name, because he was amazing.
He's a
Uh,
true public servant, and he
Absolutely.
is when I left the DA's office, I started immediately working for Sue Ann Arnall and Mr. Ravitz.
Okay.
And so I think often about the side kind of conquests that I randomly would go down, and instead of Mr. Ravitz redirecting, he would always take that time to teach. Like
Absolutely.
ultimately, he was such a strong teacher.
Absolutely.
So specifically, I habeas corpus. He was an absolute. Not only did he actually teach that at OCU Law, but he was truly an expert. And so I remember I met a friend in prison in July of 2019, and one of my side conquests was just figuring out how we can support the legal team, his family, and a commutation. And recently, as we've moved our offices from a Midtown location to a new space, I was going through all my notebooks, and I had pages upon pages of notes that Mr. Ravitz and I had about habeas corpus and post conviction relief. And so, uh, this state, as a whole, he positively changed it in so many ways. And so, yes, he's a true public servant, and we miss him every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate that moment. And
Yeah.
let me just give a shout out to all the public defenders that
Oh,
are
yeah.
putting in tireless work to help that population. That's so important. The work that
Oh,
they
yeah.
do is so important. And I'm just grateful to the work they do. And I'm going to give a shout out to the district attorney's office, too. I don't want to
Absolutely.
leave anybody out. The work that they're doing is important, and it takes all of us.
It
And
takes
so,
all. Yes,
so
absolutely.
Diversion Hub, we're so excited to hear
Yeah.
about it. And what is the Diversion Hub, and why was it created?
Yeah. So put it simply, Diversion Hub is a 501(c)(3), so it's an independent nonprofit. We are a criminal legal nonprofit that focuses on comprehensive resources, services, and advocacy for individuals and families impacted by the criminal legal system. So we were created because of a serious and significant gap within the criminal justice system that we were experiencing for several decades, that was leading to an over reliance on incarceration. We had a disproportionate amount of specific minority communities making up the population within our jail and prison. We had really no other tool or no option to support people that were stuck in these cycles of criminal justice and poverty. And so we came together, and you think about 2015, that was really the peak of our jail population. That was really the peak of our prison populations. And so, there was not one specific group alone that changed the system, but really it was a combination, a true collaboration among stakeholders that were wanting something better. Prosecutors are incredibly powerful, incredibly important. They're not going to go away anytime soon. And so, how do we give prosecutors tools to reduce their over reliance on incarceration? And we do that by creating something that really fills these gaps and harnesses what community agencies are already doing. But then also focusing on something that really hasn't been done. The criminal justice system relies heavily on incarceration, and then it also relies heavily on supervision. And so we already had supervision entities. You're starting to see as mass incarceration evolves from behind prison doors to really in the community.
Right.
Putting a lot of communities on ankle monitors that are costly and punitive, putting people on supervision that's disproportionate to their arrest or their conviction, or worst off, putting people in positions before they are convicted, when they are still innocent of the alleged charges, in positions where they can't be successful. And so in 2019, we really started focusing on a few of these buckets. We started looking at fees and fines and the local processes that were putting a lot of people back in jail.
Absolutely.
Then we looked at general navigation. People were getting out of jail at 4 a.m. and being deposited to the street with absolutely no understanding of what they were charged with. How did they get out of jail? When do they need to go to court? And then for anyone that is experiencing harm, food insecurity, housing insecurity, really struggling with an addiction, we're putting these folks out on the streets and hoping that they'll be successful. And then the third bucket we looked at was how do we increase compliance without increasing supervision
Right.
monitoring, right?
Absolutely.
And so we wanted to hone in on failure to appears. Majority of people don't fail to appear because they are acting with malice and saying, screw the court system. Most people fail to appear because they are not equipped with the knowledge to understand when their court date is. How do I get to court? Do I leave treatment to go to court, or do I address my treatment needs? Do I leave work in the middle of the day to go to treatment? Did I get the wrong court date from, some system stakeholder?
Right.
And so there are a lot of reasons why people fail to appear. And so those were kind of the three buckets we looked at. Diversion Hub launched in 2020, but several years prior to launching that official Diversion Hub location that we started, we did pilot work out of the public defender's office. And so rather than just walking into the system and assuming we knew everything, we decided to show up and listen and fill the gaps that were coming up while they were coming up. So instead of trying to convene really important, busy stakeholders like judges and attorneys, law enforcement, we started observing and we started talking to people and we started integrating in our support. That is when we learned quickly about the failure to appears issue. We also learned quickly that, again, judges want people to show up. And so we started those areas and then we established a steering committee. So the steering committee, similar to an advisory committee, we met for about a year and we really talked about what do we need to support the criminal justice system and to support these improvements. And so reoccurring themes that came out, co-location of services. Oklahoma City is spread out. It's almost necessary to have a vehicle to travel to any appointment.
Absolutely.
To get to work, to pick up kids, to do the things you need to do. And so centralizing services was a focus. The second focus was a voluntary model. And this is incredibly important for me, especially as a criminal justice practitioner. Again, when you give people agency, when you give people the opportunity to lean into what they know that they need to do for themselves and their families, and you empower them, there is more success. And so we believe strongly, and we understand it's unique for the criminal justice system, but a voluntary model that people have ownership and they can ensure that what they're doing is something that's sustainable beyond their court involvement
Right.
is very important. We also knew we didn't want to duplicate what was happening. We don't need more supervision, probation officers. What we need are more resources and advocates. And so that was the second big piece. And then the third piece was a collective impact model. And so, of course, when we were meeting with the steering committee, the collective impact model wasn't necessarily the exact thing people were saying, but they were saying they want something where everyone is embedded there. They don't want to create a new housing group when we have amazing housing groups like City Care, Homeless Alliance, Mental Health Association in the community, right? And so instead of trying to be experts in everything, let's bring those expert agencies that are aligned with the mission of improving the criminal legal system and let's co-locate them, increasing our coordination, increasing really what is the impact, avoiding duplication, um, really ensuring that all of these agencies are moving in the same direction for the benefit of the community we're serving. So that was kind of our marching orders, and that's really how Diversion Hub started. Again,
Right.
nothing was random or one single person's vision. This was a collaborative vision that was incredibly intentional to support the criminal justice system and really increase public safety by focusing on the people stuck in that system.
Well, everything, I mean, a couple great things that you talked about. This is you all's eighth year.
Yes, sir.
Eighth year, and not only have you been in effect, this is our 10-year anniversary for
Amazing.
OCJR, and so happy birthday to you
Thank
all,
you. Thank you.
and we're so excited about our 10-year. And I always hear Dr. Tiffany Crutcher. She said when the room started
Yeah.
10 years ago,
Mhm.
11 years ago, there was only three, four, five people in the room that were talking about it. But the beautiful thing about it is that room is full of advocates now,
Mhm.
people that are focused on trying to fix the Oklahoma justice system.
Yeah.
You've been able to watch that
Yeah.
growth. Just why don't you just talk about how you feel about the boom
Yeah.
off. There's plenty of room at the table,
Yeah.
but can you talk about that boom?
Yeah. So I mean, I often get scared of the idea of, quick and fast, significant changes because, you know, the criminal justice system is large. A lot of people perceive that they have no connection to the system. And I really want to always start with almost everybody does. As the system continues to grow and more people get sucked into the criminal justice system, more neighbors, more friends, more family members are going to be impacted. And so it's really important for people to understand how our criminal justice system functions. Um, the boom, or whatnot, I think, OCJR was incredibly critical to that, but I also think that, again, it's understanding the people coming through the system are not bad people. They're
Absolutely.
not criminals. There are people that pose significant threats to public safety. And that's where we want our law enforcement partners, our community to be able to focus their time on. But there are more people than not who are suffering and are stuck in this cycle. There are
Hmm.
communities that are policed heavier than other communities. There are still racial systemic issues that plague our system. And so, as much as there has been a significant positive momentum and whatnot, there still is a lot of work. I think when state question 780 and 781 were on the ballot, that was a big opportunity for us to really allow the community to respond. Prior to that, how do you really get involved when folks are going to prison at a disproportionate rate and then coming out with less stabilization? And so 780 and 781 was a huge victory for our state. And I will always say, I mean, I was probably one of the only prosecutors who voted for 780 and 781. And I heard the both sides. But at the end of the day, if we're going to criminalize things that are really public health issues, then we need to all understand the consequences and of continuing to tear families apart, put
Amen.
people in settings where they're not improving.
Right.
I think ultimately we all want people to be safer, more productive members, and the strategy that works is coming together and building a stronger coalition that's diverse, and working towards mitigating kind of that pendulum that swings back and forth within the system. We do something positive with 780 and 781, and you immediately see the community that does not believe in it trying to circumvent what was voted in. I mean, we've got to make sure that we've got people at the table that want to collaborate and really want the same goals, which
Absolutely.
is increase public safety, reduce recidivism, economic mobility for people that are stuck in these cycles.
Right.
So I think the boom is there, but I often also tell my team, um, the work speaks for itself. Let's not ever think that anything is done. We still have a long road ahead of us of improving the system and working with the stakeholders. So boom or no boom, we focus on the work, and that's really just where our lane is.
I hear so many themes in what your explanation, and I appreciate one of those themes is understanding.
Yeah,
Making sure people have a good understanding of the population you all serve, but even more so, I think probably the most prevalent recurring theme I hear in different ways but stability.
yes, sir.
And can you talk about what problem did traditional system fail to solve?
Oh yeah. So what's really interesting and what's been interesting for me over the last decade, most of my friends are attorneys. My family, I have a lot of lawyers in my family. I'm married to a lawyer. And so, it's
That's almost a joke. I mean, there
yeah,
you can
like
come up with a
truly.
joke about that, but go
Yes.
ahead. I'm sorry.
Dinner table combos are very interesting. We're all very passionate and whatnot. But I the court system and the traditional stakeholders, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, the judge, the clerk, the bailiff, really the folks within the court system. I think often again it's this idea of, like, what do we do with this individual that we have seen over and over again? We've got
Mm,
this police report that has evidence of, criminal activity. We have all of these priors. We have no tools. And I take myself back to several incidents and several dockets that I sat on where I was stuck without anything. Like, I knew I didn't want to send someone to prison because that was not the right option, but then I also had no other option.
right.
And within the culture of the district attorney's office, it's often this idea of there's no other option than prison. Last time you gave them, deferred, they weren't successful. Now they're suspended. They weren't successful. Now it's prison. But then we get really angry at people and we get very annoyed that they're back on the docket, but we don't actually take the time to peel back the layers and figure out what the root cause of why that person's coming back.
Mm,
On the same token, at that point in time when I was a prosecutor or other counties that don't have kind of these wraparound supports,
right.
what do you even do, right? If there aren't community resources to support the housing, the mental health, the substance use, the food insecurity, the income instability, the childcare, all of these pieces, then really our only option at that point becomes probation or prison.
Right.
And so when we put someone in jail for something that does not pose a risk to public safety, we destabilize them. And that's every scenario. I know people believe that, okay, well, we're going to put them in jail for a little bit. They've committed this crime and they'll dry out a little bit. That is not reality. People die in jails, people die in prisons. They're not necessarily bad actors all the time that are creating systems that people die within. But when you have medical issues that are not being addressed, when you aren't able to continue your outpatient services, um, drugs are in these carceral settings. When you can't pick up your kid from daycare, your stability blocks that you previously had, and maybe they were very, very, very wobbly, but now they're gone. And so now you're starting back over,
Right.
and you lose hope, and you lose that burning desire to be better because you feel like everything is falling within and that you can't get out. And every time you try, something else happens. So why try at this point?
Right.
And so you also see stability from a place of people that have financial affluency versus those that don't. And
Right.
that's one of the biggest things that I think we do at Diversion Hub. We elevate the playing field for people that don't have a surplus of resources and services. Two individuals come before a prosecutor. One has an incredible attorney that's pretty costly to retain, a binder full of all the things that they're doing, and they're in a suit, they're at court early, they've got everything. So the perception is this person's not going to come back. They've
Right.
got their stuff together, like they're good. They're not a risk to public safety. But then you've got another individual who, same scenario, maybe same fact pattern, but has never been in the system, brings her children to court, late to court, no attorney, and doesn't have the ability to retain counsel, even if they were able to get out on a cash bond. Maybe a lot
Right.
of their family came together and posted that bond. And so what you see is that first individual is going to get a better recommendation from the state. And this individual that came in without legal representation, late to court with children, all of these other pieces and these barriers, that person's going to get a longer sentence or a more punitive sentence. And then that's when you start with people getting stuck in cycles. So this first person is going to charge every single fee and fine onto a credit card, worry about it later. Their attorneys probably already got them enrolled in every class possible. They've got a vehicle. They don't have to worry about missing work. And so even though that person could potentially be a bigger risk to public safety than this second individual,
Right.
the system equates that affluency, that lack of financial resources, often as people that aren't doing what they need to do.
Right.
And so it gets blurred, right? If you are on minimum wage and you are unable to keep up with the financial legal obligations, you are not a threat to public safety. And often you're not telling the court, piss off, I don't believe in holding myself accountable. But people just, they can't. And so that's a big piece that motivates us, elevating that playing field, helping that second individual secure childcare, get to court on time, fill out the public defender application correctly, have the confidence to speak to why you are in here and fight for yourself. And so that was a really long answer to your question.
No, it's
But
awesome.
stability is
But
everything.
stability's
It's
everything.
everything.
It's everything.
Absolutely
And
everything.
let me just tell you, you have brought up so many great points, but I'm going to just slow down just a minute.
Yep.
And
Yep.
the reason is that I want to make sure that our audience and their family members understand Diversion Hub. How do they find it? Who connects them with Diversion Hub?
Yes, sir.
So why don't you just brag on your team at Diversion Hub and the kind and how clients find it. What kind of client comes off the street and comes
Yep.
to Diversion Hub?
Thank you, Mike. I can kind of talk a lot about the system, but it's easy to brag about D-Hub and the team there. So I'll give some kind of just quick points. So Diversion Hub is a nonprofit that serves individuals and families impacted by the criminal legal system. We are voluntary. We are not a supervision entity. We are not an entity that gets people out on Diversion Hub bonds. What we do is really simple. We meet people where they're at and we provide resources and services and advocacy that's individualized to that person.
Right.
We do a whole whole family approach. So if an individual comes in and they're struggling with housing, and perhaps one of the leaders of the family is in and out of jail, we're going to help everybody. If it means helping the kid get enrolled in school and get what they need to be successful, we're going to do that. And so when people come to Diversion Hub, there's no gatekeeper. And that's really important to understand. No one needs to approve or deny you accessing Diversion Hub. And that was a critical piece when we designed our model. So what that means is you don't need a probation officer to refer you. You don't need to show up with an ID. You don't need to show up with any specific document. If you struggle to get to Diversion Hub, we will get you there. Monday through Friday, we see new clients 8 to noon. We average about 130 to 150 new clients a week within our intake window, and I think that speaks volumes. We don't need to create additional hoops for people to jump through to access the services that help them and their families be successful, safe, self-sufficient, stable. And so instead of trying to create more hoops, we reduce all of those and are as low barrier as possible. Our eligibility is pretty simple. It's criminal justice involvement. We work with Oklahoma County District Court, Oklahoma City Municipal. We work with the Western Federal District. We work in Canadian County. We work in Cleveland County. We work within Norman Municipal. We're hoping to launch another site in Pontotoc. We're continuing to fill those gaps and support individuals that have this justice involvement. Our entire goal is to help people get out of the system. We empower. We believe in aligning resources and services and helping people navigate out of the system. And we believe that that's where safety starts. We're a collective impact model, as I said. We have 15 partner agencies that show up every day and are aligned with our mission. So instead of, again, our 85 staff trying to be experts in everything, we bring those experts on site. So what it may look like is you walk in a Diversion Hub, you sign in as a new client, say it's 9:30 in the morning. You're going to first meet with a justice navigator. Justice navigator is going to pull you back, is going to look at all of your justice involvement to figure out how we can help you be compliant.
Right.
A lot of folks don't understand that. They don't understand the piece of compliance with advocacy. To help someone be compliant, but not also advocate and elevate what helps them be successful is to not necessarily move the needle.
Right.
And so we're pulling everything. You're on this bond. Okay, you're required to show up once a week and drug test. You've got to show them proof of employment. Are you employed? We'll get a case manager in here. We'll start working on that. If you're on probation, we want to make sure that you're successful and you're doing everything you need to do. But we're also hearing you out and supporting. If you haven't met with your probation officer, we're going to schedule that. We're going to get that done. We're going to go with you. We're going to call them right now. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that you have a fighting chance to remain in the community and be safe.
Right.
People that show up to Diversion Hub, they want better for themselves. I often get told no one will show up because you're not court ordered. No one will show up because if they don't have a prison sentence hanging over their head, they won't do the right thing. Completely flip the script on that. Since the second we opened our doors, hundreds, if not thousands of people, we see about 1,000 people a week, show up, no matter their barrier, ready to fight for themselves. And so that's one of the things I'm most proud, to walk into our lobby and to see people with all sorts of different barriers and backgrounds, but all focusing on that one piece of resilience. How do I push forward? How do I get the ID so I can get this job so that I can then get off the streets and then pay my legal debt? How do I be better for my kid who's starting to interact with the juvenile justice system? How do I break that? How do I get into a VOTEC program that's going to give me upward mobility beyond these temp jobs that are still great, but not where I want to be ultimately? Stability. Again, it's always stability.
most of our audience is not going to know who Pee Wee Herman is,
Yeah.
but he always had
I do.
he always had a keyword of the day or something like that, and everybody said, when he said,
Yeah.
the keyword today is stability. So so
Stability
we're
is
gonna
everything.
scream when they say when we hear the word stability. Let me just 1,000 people a week.
Yeah,
That is a lot of need, and those
yeah,
are only the probably very small number of those people that need help.
absolutely.
But in the 8 years you've been there, you are opening the doors to a new facility.
Yes, sir.
And can you tell them where the facility
Yeah.
is and how they can find you?
Yeah. So our first location was in Midtown. We have moved our Midtown location and we are now on 1200 Linwood Boulevard. And so we have kind of moved into a campus. And so we have much more space to serve our clients, to serve more clients, to serve the clients we do serve better, to bring on more partners, to co locate more programs that are evidence based and meaningful to this population to get them out of the system. And so we're really excited. Then there is an energy at Diversion Hub. There is a magical kind of feeling. This is a very, very, very hard space to work within. And people that we work with are staff who have overcome the same barriers as those clients. We are all very passionate. And to work within a system where we lose people to death, we lose people to overdose, to homicide, to incarceration. It is not a space that's easy. And so being able to have a dignified, beautiful office where clients come in and they feel proud to show up is everything. So please come check us out. We have incredible art. The facility is a MAPS 4 facility. And so the city has invested in the building, not in the operations, but in the building. And I think that's a testament to what the leadership of Oklahoma City are doing. They
Right.
are investing in things that work, and they are investing in things that are filling significant gaps in our community and touching multiple systems. And so we're grateful, we're humble, we're scrappy. It's a magical place, but it's not an easy place. And so please come see us.
Well, and let me just, because I want you to say that
Yeah.
address again,
Yep.
but I also want to, do you just have to show up, or is there a phone number that you can call, or do you, what's the best way to get connected?
Yeah.
Do you just show up on campus, or?
Yeah. So if you are a client or a future client, you're looking for resources, services, you can show up to Diversion Hub Monday through Friday. 8 to noon is when we do our intakes. You can give us a call. Our phone lines are very busy. Give us grace. You can call me directly. You can email me directly. I am not a hidden executive director. We all do this work. We all do every piece of the work.
Your office, I can attest. Your
Yeah.
office is in the front. It's
Yeah.
not going. It's not
Yep.
all the way in
Yes.
the back like some.
Yep.
Uh,
Please email me. I would love for more folks that that maybe have not even really understood what we do, to come through. And even if you don't believe that this is the way that we improve the criminal legal system, I believe you still have a spot at the table, because it does take all. So come see us, call me, email me. I can send out my information through this podcast. But if you need help, if your family member needs help, Diversion Hub will do everything we can. So
to get you pointed in the
Yep.
right direction. And I love it, and I love the work that you do. A lot of people, I know that there are a couple. Let me just take for instance, is I've known people to be let out on the street from the county
Yeah.
jail and head over there. Well,
Yeah.
they hadn't eaten for the last 48 hours,
Yep.
and they come over there. They didn't have any fresh clothes, and you all were able to give them something to eat
Yeah.
and some clothes. just to give them some dignity,
Yep.
And so I want you to talk about
Yeah.
that those
Yeah.
opportunities are available, but I want you to also talk about how important dignity is in the way services are delivered.
Dignity is everything. I have a perfect example from yesterday. One of our clients we've worked with for several years. He's incredible. Um, he was very frustrated at he had met with one of our on-site partners and our program team, and he was checking things off the list, but there was a snag with his benefits. He grew increasingly frustrated. Again, we have a trauma informed environment. We are all trained and have experience within de escalation. We understand that people have continually been told no over and over and over again. And by the time they come to Diversion Hub, they are burnt out, they are bitter, they are angry, they have no hope. We understand that. We don't expect people to walk in with all of these significant barriers that a lot of them have had for decades, um, and immediately change their behavior or coping skills when they are frustrated. um, we de-escalated this individual, we worked with him, we talked with him, we heard him out, and then we started tackling through all of the different needs that he had. And so dignity, being heard, having ownership and your own agency is important. Giving people something that they can understand, individualizing. At the end of that conversation, he hadn't eaten in 3 days. This young man was doing everything he needed to do, working on getting a job, working on his family, working on everything he needed to do for the court system. He hadn't eaten in 3 days. First off, everyone can understand if you have not had anything to eat, you have barely had any water, you're not necessarily functioning at your best level.
Absolutely.
And so we tag teamed it. It was a perfect scenario of what happens behind closed doors at D-Hub. We had a justice navigator handling one piece. We had our DHS front porch ambassadors handling another piece. We had our front operations team handling another piece. And we fed him. We gave him a comfortable space. And he left with tools, and he left feeling like he was heard. And that is everything. When people leave feeling dignified, when people leave feeling like even if the answer was no, even if there was no ability to do what I need them to do, at least they heard me out. They slowed down. They didn't just match my energy. They didn't mock me. They didn't, walk around the corner and complain about me. They said, "What do we need to do?" And they helped me through that uncomfortable feeling that I was experiencing. And that's everything. And that's the magic.
Right.
People need dignity. They need to feel like they're part of a community. And again, I wish we could do every single thing for everybody, but really we can't. We'll fight as much as we can. But when you help people understand the why, and you make sure that they know your sincerity and authenticity, that is how we change the community, and those efforts compound over time. And so dignity, hope, all of that is critical in everything we do.
And we're talking about criminal justice system here, but that is life. That is a life trait. That is
Exactly.
a understanding of life and how to impact the people
Yep.
around you.
Yep.
There's an old saying, and I'm gonna mess it up, but people may not remember what you did for them, but they always will remember the way you made them feel.
Yes.
And no, I appreciate it, and those are the
Yeah.
things that I've heard about D Hub, Diversion Hub, and why it's so important for people to understand and
Yeah.
know what you all do. We've talked about this, but how often do housing, addiction, and mental health challenges show up before deeper system involvement?
Yeah. So housing insecurity, mental health barriers, substance use barriers, there is a strong intersectionality. to the criminal justice system. And oftentimes, when communities lack those resources or there's a significant stigma associated with really going after those resources, often people end up in the system. Not always. I really always want to be careful that mental health and criminal justice, just because you are struggling with a mental health barrier, does not mean that you should be considered, in the criminal justice system. We just unfortunately have equipped a lot of our criminal justice systems and stakeholders without the tools and the knowledge to be able to say this is not the system that needs to respond to this behavior. And communities are suffering. When needs aren't met, often people will move into survival mode, and survival mode often can lead to criminal justice thinking. And all of a sudden, now you're wrapped up in the criminal justice system, and so your barriers to accessing what you originally needed are much more significant. Um, it's also hard to help someone be held accountable while also knowing that they're unwell and that someone needs meaningful and comprehensive mental health intervention, and they can't wait 6 months to meet with the doctor. They need it now.
Right.
They can't meet in 6 weeks to get a medication review. Maybe their medication's inappropriate for their barrier, and now we've put someone on something that's not working. The folks in the criminal justice system who have been identified that have high mental health needs do not get treated the same way that individuals with no criminal justice background get treated. Um, and that is a problem. And that is something that, if we don't create better intervention pathways, we will continue to see more and more people that are mentally unstable in the system
Right.
that isn't necessarily equipped to manage them.
Right.
So it's massive. We also understand the criminalization of poverty. Homelessness is a massive issue for a lot of people, and a lot of communities don't want to see people that are unhoused. However, these are our neighbors, and being unhoused is a period of time. It's an experience. It's not an identity. And how do we really help people reduce that stigma so that we can move and be into that productive space of being housed, happy, safe, proud to be, who you are as a community member. So it's everything. We do a comprehensive housing program at Diversion Hub with our awesome partners, Homeless Alliance and City Care. We have several partners that help us with mental health, substance use, co-occurring. We have Red Rock on site, North Care on site. We are working with Creoaks. We are also working to retain a private therapist that is 100% dedicated to meeting the needs of individuals. So it's an ever-growing area for us to solve
With
and to
room to
solve
grow.
well. Yes,
Yeah, right.
with room to grow.
Right. Let me ask you a question, because, of course, the justice system is multifaceted, as we all know. A client that may be let out of Oklahoma County that is pending charges, bonds or ORs out,
Yeah.
and they're on the street trying to figure out
Yeah.
what's next, versus
Yeah.
somebody that might have been in prison for the last 10, 15 years, walks out. How does Diversion Hub help those two
Yeah.
different clienteles?
Yeah. So our evidence-based modalities that we work within, we do a strength-based case management model. We do a broken case management model as well. And so everything is individualized. So when someone that comes out of prison comes to Diversion Hub and checks in, and maybe they know, okay, I need support with employment. Or, I have this temporary housing set up. I really need support with long-term housing. When they come in, they'll do a strength and needs assessment. They'll work with a justice navigator to make sure that everything is compliant on the court side. Maybe they were released early on parole, et cetera, or other cases in other counties. But then the case manager, through that strength and needs assessment, will identify all of the different needs and areas and then create an individualized service plan. So our service plans are always twofold. How do we ensure compliance with the system? But then also, how do we identify social service needs? The beautiful thing about Diversion Hub that I'm very passionate about, but also can be difficult as we start to serve more and more folks, we don't have a finite window. So we don't expect someone to come through and, when they're in the pretrial phase, unwind decades of barriers and unmet needs. So we follow a continuum model. That's another evidence-based modality that we believe strongly in. And so when someone comes in, they're working their service plan or pulling in additional partners to support on some of those objectives. But it may take 3 years for someone to get to the point where they are able to do everything for the court system and be compliant. There's a change of behavior and engagement that's increased. Housing takes a while, employment takes a while. And so we follow a continuum. If that client is successful and they are closed out, they're good with their case manager, their peer, their mentor, their housing team, and life happens, because life happens, they can come back. And so being kind of the bumpers for a lot of people, instead of expecting perfection, and then evaluating everything we do. So I know that's probably a future question, so I won't get too far into how do we know what we're doing is working, because that's also important. But again, if someone's coming out of prison, their needs may look different. Also, their needs may look the same. And so we assume that everyone that comes out of prison is much more stable than someone in the pretrial phase. It's not always the case.
Right.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And so by individualizing and also having an incredibly diverse team, 50% of our team have the same lived experience barriers as the people coming through our doors. And so we try different approaches, and we support people in understanding how they can also help themselves. This isn't just a place that hands out. We don't just pay rent and say you're good. But we also understand barriers like financial barriers.
ID barriers.
ID
It
barriers,
sounds
yes.
simple to a lot of people.
And it's exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, ID barriers, transportation barriers, people that are working but living on the street. I think that's hard for folks to get. A lot of folks, they're like, well, they should just work. They are working,
Right.
but there's a lot of things stacked up against them that they're working through.
Right.
And so, so it's all about individualized. It's always about making sure that what you're doing is evidence-based and rooted in research and validation, and not just what you think is working.
Right.
So
Well, let me tell you this: is I am going to ask you about how you know it's working, but I want to talk about that first 72 hours after you get released.
yeah,
That first 72. How important is that first 72 to help somebody?
it's critical. So Diversion Hub, we have 5 vehicles. I'm sure folks that live in OKC have probably seen our green, our decked out green vehicles. Those are put to work all day, every day. And so we
Okay.
pick up people from jail. We do discharge planning and release. And so if someone's getting released and they need support, we can pick them up immediately from the jail, take them to Diversion Hub, get them engaged and looped in on several services. When people are released from the jail and they are unhoused at the time, they are struggling with an addiction, maybe they've got DHS involvement as well, it is critical to get them in a position where they understand what their options are. I think if I wasn't in this role, I would assume that when you go to jail and you get released, you probably know what you were charged with. You probably know when you got to go to court. That is totally false. And I think it's hard for prosecutors to hear that. It's hard for judges, but it's the reality. I meet with more people that don't know what's going on than I meet with people who do know.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if you've got money to retain an attorney or not. It's complicating. It's
Right.
complicated. And so when people get released, if you can immediately engage them in a positive culture, a positive community, you can give them the information that they need to be successful. If you can provide them a space where they feel safe and you can start building that connection and that rapport, you will change their trajectory. If that person isn't ready, they at least have that seed of, I think that one place like that was green, that like picked me up. I think I can go back to them.
Right. Right.
And that's what's important because we won't solve every problem. I wish we could, and our entire team wishes we could. But it's important to start building those seeds. Majority of people we pick up from jail come to Diversion Hub and they start engaging in services. If someone doesn't, we equip with them when their court date is. We give them resources and we tell them we're here when you're ready. But again, jail is not a place. It's not a place to take a nap and pause work and pause all the life responsibilities. It is a very, 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 very scary place for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And it is a very hard place to leave and not carry psychological impacts from being there. And so it's critical to engage. It's critical to equip people with what they need to be successful, and to really be that pro-social environment that they can go to start tackling what they need.
Right.
So,
And let me just tell you, I had an opportunity to interview on this podcast, Unintentional Consequences, Glenn Simmons.
amazing.
Mr. Glenn Simmons, incarcerated 48 years, and he talked about how he was in prison 48 years, wrongfully accused. But he said that the people that he looked up to in prison always told him to keep his eye on the door.
Yep.
Don't get used to being in this space. Yeah. And although he was there 48 years, and he was very clear, he said that he lost it a couple of times, but he was able to bring himself back. But he talked about how critical it is to stay focused on being out of the situation you're in, and not become a person that just makes prison your home. And so he also in addition talked about he would never put any pictures on his wall because he knew he wasn't going to stay there, although he was there for a very long time. But ultimately he knew that he was innocent and he kept fighting. But nevertheless, I we're talking a lot about those individuals that you see in D-Hub, but we know that there are tentacles, there are strings, there are people that are touched. It's not just a person arrested, it's not just a person that's in jail, it's their families, it's their communities engaged. Can you kind of talk about the wings that this justice system creates that touches so many people and affects so many people?
Oh yeah. We switched to whole family approach for this exact reason, right? So we knew that if one person in the family unit was navigating the criminal legal system, everybody in that family unit was being affected. And most of the time negatively affected.
Absolutely.
We'll just be honest there. And so making sure that with our goal of breaking cycles, and really being able to be upstream where we can, right? Our model is again focusing with people that are already in the system. But when you start supporting the entire family, you start making sure that you're breaking those cycles for those kids. And that's everything. Almost all of our clients have some nexus to the system. in their family. And so we know that their likelihood of going to jail, going to prison is much higher. So making sure that we are taking care of the family, we're helping the kiddos get in school, we're helping the kiddos with work, with summer programs, with after school programs, getting with doctors, making sure that physical health is addressed, really looking at social determinants of health is what we do, which again is much longer term. We look at short term and then we start looking long term.
Right.
And when we start addressing the social determinants of health and we start understanding that people that are in the system have just as much of a fighting chance to be incredibly successful and leaders in our community, we start actually making positive changes in our system. And so making sure that, again, that if a kid is coming in and their dad is incarcerated, do they have a positive mentor in their life? Do
Right.
they have someone that can walk this path with them, can help them understand that a positive community doesn't put them in an environment that increases their likelihood of being killed, overdosing, or going to jail.
Absolutely.
But again, also making sure that we're doing that in a way that aligns with each individual person. One approach for this family may not work for this family. And so pairing people with the right tools to be successful. Um, and again, back to the continuum. I'm thinking of several individuals that I have helped that we've worked with for years they're doing incredible, but life happens. Something happens. And maybe a young kid who was doing great and mom's doing wonderful, but now kiddo is in the system. They know where they can go quicker rather than feeling hopeless, navigating the juvenile justice system, getting a pamphlet of just resources. I mean, I think that works for some people. Majority of the time it doesn't.
Right.
And so giving them a place that they can go where they can feel like they can actually do something. And that is key. So
Well, let me just ask you this: is that Oklahoma County has, first of all, it's the largest population.
mhm,
So you could probably grow 10 times the
mhm,
size your size currently and still not have
yeah,
enough resources and all of that to help everybody that needs.
yep.
But Oklahoma County does do it pretty well in comparison
Oh
to
yeah.
some space. I earlier I heard you talk about that you are moving to Pontotoc County. Now
We
everybody
hope
didn't
to. We hope to.
hope
Yes.
to.
Yes, we hope
Oh,
to. We are in Cleveland County and Canadian County as well.
all righty. Well, but both of those are around Oklahoma County.
Yeah.
Pontotoc County is not. Uh,
That's a true rural site
right.
yes.
And I just feel like I need to point out it's not necessarily for you uh, to comment on it because I'm not trying to bring any criticism on any specific county, but
Yeah.
our other counties need to be looking at your model. They need to be looking at what works because some counties aren't doing anything. Is 781 funding available for counties, and most counties in Oklahoma, this is free money that your county can apply for
Yeah.
to allow them to set up some services outside of putting people in jail. So
Yeah.
we want to make sure that people understand 781 funding. And that reminds me, that's a good
Yeah.
episode to have. We need to
Yes.
have that episode. But what, and I just had to say that, and I'm going to just take a commercial break to make sure that everybody knows that's tuning into this. I'm speaking with Meagan Taylor, the excellent executive director for Diversion Hub, D Hub as it's
D Hub.
affectionately known as. And but what happens, or what does a community look like when reintegration services when it's working?
Oh, yeah. Um, so again, like looking at social determinants of health, looking at economic mobility for people. If needs are met, people will be successful. Yes, there are people that are a threat to public safety, and the system focuses on those individuals. But A majority of the people that are in the system are not that. They need resources. Resources does not mean a hand out. It really doesn't. I think making sure people understand that and understand that building community, building engagement, building places where people can get their tools in one location, reentry will be more successful. Recidivism will be lowered drastically. It is much more cost efficient and effective to be able to start meeting those needs and resources rather than keeping them in the system and assuming that if they can't be successful on probation, it's because they're saying screw it and we should just send them to prison and that's our answer. And so reintegrating into community looks like following a continuum. It looks like using evidence-based resources and services and case management to help people and empower people to be better, but then also being those bumpers when things do go wrong in life. And that's how we solve recidivism.
Right.
Diversion Hub's recidivism, evaluated by a third party every year, is half of the county's recidivism. We do not cherry pick clients. We do not go for a client that we know maybe has a better outcome. We never do that. That is a very big piece to our strategy. Instead of focusing on feeding the narrative of we work with low-level offenders, you hear that a lot of times. That's not how you effectuate meaningful change in the community, right? And
Right.
also, we don't call our clients offenders.
Right.
And so making sure that people understand that when people want better, give them access and resources
Amen.
because they're making the step that you don't realize how hard it is to make because maybe you are given that so many times you took advantage or you took for granted that idea that, you always knew food would be on the table. You always knew when it was storming outside, you'd have a safe place to stay, to do your homework, technology, all these pieces. And so reentry looks like supporting our people, loving our people. It doesn't mean that you're saying their criminal justice involvement is okay, right? It's not okay to harm our community. But it is the only way we make positive change
Amen.
is by shifting people rather than just saying you're not worthy or you're violent. No, people need the tools to be better. And that's what we do is we give them that. So
I've discussed multiple times on this podcast how I served in the House of Representatives for 12 years, and I cannot tell you how many times I heard the debate that we are offering this group of people a handout.
yeah,
But I also have watched communities across the state of Oklahoma get negatively impacted by a tornado or
Yes.
flood, and really getting impacted from a tornado or flood in one community is really no different than a community that's impacted by over incarceration or high arrest, because it affects the communities,
Yeah.
it affects the family, and not offering a hand up, getting
Yeah.
getting them to a point that they are stable
Yeah.
is so critical for success. And I can use that in a conversation, whether we're talking about modernizing our justice system or talking about a tornado hitting a community. It is the same. It is the absolute same.
Yeah.
But it has everything to do with the how they look at the people
Yeah.
that they want to help. And so how can changing one person's path impact the entire family?
Oh, well, beyond we know that, we know from research and we know from evidence that's been corroborated over and over again that if your family is impacted by the criminal justice system, if your mom or dad or grandma or caretaker, whoever the person is, your brother, your sister, if they are in jail, your likelihood of being in the system is much higher. It's similar to the foster care system, right? We know that pipeline exists. And so making sure that when we are working with the individual and we are giving them tools to be successful, that the entire family is going to be successful. That the entire family is moving in a better direction, rather than taking care of a few things, patching up a few things, and sending that person on their way without addressing all of the other underlying issues that are happening, right? And so we want to disrupt that pipeline. We want to shake it up, and we want to ensure that if one of your caretakers is going to prison, how are we continuing to support you? I think of one in particular example. We've worked with a mother for several years, and she fortunately went to prison. Now we worked with the court system to ensure that the kiddos were taken care of, that they were all in the same
That's
unit,
so important.
and that they had the means to be successful. We still see that person regularly. We still support those kiddos. But when a nonprofit or when an agency looks at a finite window of time to serve people, they miss those opportunities, right? And so that's kind of a big difference. So even though mom went to prison, and of course we all did everything we could, but that was ultimately what happened. She's going to get out. And I always remember Judge Stoner in training, majority of people who go to prison get out. And so rather than assuming that they're not our problems, they are our neighbors. So let's invest in them.
Amen.
And when she gets out, when that mom gets out, we will be there, and we will not place barriers in front of her. We will also not judge her, because that's not our lane. It's not our role. Our lane and our role is to focus on how we continue to get you out. And so she knows that her kid is safe. She knows that when she gets out, she can come to us and we start over and we hit the ground sprinting. And it's really that simple. Because often people, they get one or two chances, but they had all of these other things going on that weren't necessarily addressed. And sometimes it takes the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th time, but we can't stop trying, because that's how we improve the outcomes for our state as a whole. People in the system are out of the system. So
You said something so valuable. Sometimes it's the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th time.
Yep.
But there are you see a pattern that the problem started long time before this justice system hit.
Oh yeah. Survival.
Yeah.
It's hard not to like think of specific examples, and so I'm trying to focus and not get carried away with that. But that's what I do, right? Like
Right.
I work with people, and so it happens well before that. Also, people can get lucky and not touch the system, but do the same things that other people are doing. And I think too that's something that we have to remember. And especially if you are in a heavily policed area. And so it happens when dad goes to prison and mom's working several jobs, or maybe mom's not in the picture, and maybe grandma has physical or has some health concerns. And now you're having to really take care of your siblings. And I'm a mom of two boys, and I'll do every single thing possible to make sure they're safe and that they have food in their bellies every night.
Right.
And that's really the same mentality of everybody. Like, people in the system, they're also trying to do that. And I think we get really obsessed with certain outliers, and we think those outliers are everybody. We think those one outliers that allegedly or not allegedly, maybe they were convicted of horrific things. And we say that, see, that's the people in the system, and it's just not.
Right.
That's the minority. The majority of people are fighting. Life is hard. And so if my mom's gone and I need to feed my siblings, and I can go down the street and make some fast cash, even if I know it's wrong, that may be happening. So how do we intervene and give them tools and
Right.
positive mentorships and environments, but also not negate their necessity to survive.
Right.
Um, and so it happens well before you touch the system. And sure, there's the one-offs, right? You made a really bad mistake and you're in the system and maybe you just need a few pieces and then you're good to go. Like we serve everyone and but again, it for majority of people stuck in that cycle that are really taking a lot of the system's time, it happened well before. Those building blocks started disintegrating quickly.
Right. Right.
Stability.
Stability.
Yep.
Yeah. No, it's real. So Oklahoma, Oklahoma County, Pontotoc. We're pulling for
Yep.
you all to get in Pontotoc, Canadian Cleveland. What does modernizing our justice system look like to you?
Oh gosh, yeah. Um, not focusing so heavily on supervision that that's the only tool to be successful. Remembering that the individuals that we're working with, that we are trying to give better tools for coping. We're trying to change behavior. We're trying to build positive communities for them to live within. Um, we really need to understand again that giving them resources and support, working on housing, working on treatment, working on again building effective relationships, helping them understand the environment they grew up in is not the environment that they're going to be successful in. um, that is public safety. That is how we reduce the amount of people funneling into the system every year. um, in understanding again that when you sit in jail before you are convicted of a crime and you are ordered to do countless things that cost thousands of dollars, and they're the few tools that the system has to hold someone accountable, like understanding when it's not working and not taking that as um, a personal attack, right?
Right.
Um, I don't think everybody should be on supervision. I don't think everyone should have ankle monitors and drug test all the time, but that doesn't mean it doesn't necessarily work for certain people.
Right.
And so understanding that we all have to come to the table. Profitization is a real thing within the criminal justice system. Stakeholders profit off of people being in the system. And when we start removing people into productive pathways, we start seeing folks getting angry about those changes, even when they're working. And so, understanding who you have at the table and the different interests, having them at the table for sure, because that's how we make meaningful change.
Right.
Is making sure that we're all at the table, but also understanding the perverse incentive that the system has kind of created.
And let me just tell you, because of course, OCJR is at the Capitol every day working on pieces of legislation with our legislators, working on educating legislators, as well as supporting our partners like
Yeah.
Diversion Hub, making sure you all are empowered with data, the correct data of what
Yes.
Oklahoma looks like as far as incarceration system. Uh, some of our critics
Yeah.
often say, well, you don't want people to be accountable. I want to just give you an opportunity just to, although you don't want people to be monitored, although, or you didn't necessarily say you don't want people to be monitored, because some people do need to be
Yeah.
monitored.
A
Some people do need to.
disproportionate. Yeah.
Let's talk about
Yeah.
accountability just for a minute, and just so you can make the pitch clear that this is not about not holding people accountable.
I it Public safety and holding people accountable happens at Diversion Hub every day. Helping people understand their how they interact with people, how they need to be successful in the workplace, how they need to interact with a neighbor when they just got housed, in an appropriate and safe way. Um, Changing behavior is holding people accountable and helping them know what they need to do to be better. And so I don't think everyone doesn't need to be monitored, but I think we rely so heavily because of this feeling of, if I didn't monitor that person and they committed a crime, it's on me. So I think it's less about truly doing what we think is going to help and more of a focus on, if they are being monitored, they're, if something happens, at least they were being monitored, versus really understanding the barriers that perhaps the monitoring created. The ankle monitor program, thousands of dollars. And it's often not used for people who are failing to appear. It or people who are a flight risk. It's a liability. It's a feeling of, well, if something happens, I want to at least be able to know that ankle monitor was on there. And so use those appropriately when the evidence says it needs to be used, but don't use it more so as a cloak of liability, because that's not going to help people. And we know the evidence is not there to back that. And so holding people accountable is saying, this is what you need to be compliant with the system, and we're going to do these things. Tell me why you aren't happy about this. What happened here? Okay, let's start talking about this. Let's start figuring out. Case managers are not just random people off the street. They're professionals.
Right.
My case managers, my justice navigators, my recovery navigators, my peer mentors, my operation coordinators, everybody is focused on helping people be successful in the community. And when you're successful in the community, you're accountable to your actions. And so changing behavior, building that relationship, helping a client understand that when you throw your cup of noodles on the street and you say, no one's helping me, and you go steal from a gas station, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what that just did. But we don't really get much progress if we just assume that we're all equipped with the base knowledge of that was wrong.
Right.
And when you peel back, you start encountering and interacting with reasons that behavior is there. And so people need to get to their level of success that's individualized to them, and they get there through effective relationships that hold people accountable, and giving people a voice to their own agency.
Right. So one of my favorite singers is Luther Vandross.
Love it.
And he had this song, "If This World Was Mine and I Could have anything that I own." Anyway,
Yep,
I don't sing and I
Yep.
can't remember the words, but I hope you remember the
Yep,
song.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I think that may be "House Is Not a Home," but nevertheless, I'm not going to sing it for you. But I do. If this world was yours, how would diversion play in the future of Oklahoma's justice system?
Diversion would be the presumption, and I know we are very far from that. Diversion would be something that law enforcement partners leaned into, that bail bondsmen understood, that prosecutors engaged with. I think, again, it's very much so. It's never a liberal or conservative or Democrat or Republican thing. I mean, that doesn't matter at all. What matters is better outcomes for our state, for people, for all. And so diversion, I would love for one day it to be the presumption, and it not to be considered something that is letting people do what they want. It's much more comprehensive than putting someone on probation and having them pay a bunch of people. This is where we start peeling back layers. And also, success is not 100%. If that was the case, then we would be at 100% because we've incarcerated millions of people. And what we're actually seeing is the opposite. And then I will add with understanding the economic side of the criminal justice system. It's not sustainable to continue to incarcerate, to continue to criminalize certain behaviors. It's just not sustainable. and whatever viewpoint you have, that is a fact. And so making sure people can come together and understand that the court system is not just a prosecutor, a judge, and a defense attorney. An individual has the ability to determine their future and give you guys or give those stakeholders evidence as to why that person should be in the community, and prosecutors should lean into that and think more about the opportunities they were given that maybe others weren't.
What gives you hope for the future?
Oh. Specifically for Diversion Hub, that we are in spaces that we need to be, that we're working with stakeholders, that we're proving that people in the system deserve investment, deserve a fighting chance. Specific just to the criminal justice system, I would say less instability, in the sense of this understanding that if we don't fund the system, we're going to continue to create this parasite of people profiting. And so removing that and properly funding the system so that the system can actually start to be responsive and start to do things that we know works, rather than feeling like we have all of these perverse incentives to keep it going as is. I heard recently from someone who was angry that their client was getting access to some peer classes, and the client's feedback was, hey, I was told I'm going to go to jail if I keep doing these. These classes are actually giving me a different way to look at things. And so I grappled with that for a while, had the communication with the individual, not the client, and the individual continued to say that it's the worst the system has ever been, that I'm losing money because of all of this, and people are running around committing crimes left and right. If we can operate off of one singular set of data and facts, we will all be better. Public safety is not decreasing. It's in fact increasing. And it's similar to the homelessness state of the union. We don't have one denominator and control group to operate, because if it was that simple, we wouldn't be having these issues, right?
Right.
Homelessness is static. It's changing as populations grow. 1% decrease in homelessness is still a massive thing. And so helping people understand that their version of their maybe narrow lane is not every single person's version of the truth. But I really think if we can get the data out there, and we can get the data to show that crime is decreasing, public safety is increasing, this is how we measure recidivism. This is how we look at desistance, like understanding those things. That would be my dream.
So, and I'm about to bring up the special word of the day.
Stability.
Stability. If Oklahoma invested more in stability and opportunity, what would change over the next decade?
We would start to shrink our criminal justice system. We'd improve our education system. We would have, in general, economic mobility for more people than we have today. And so outcomes across the board would improve.
So, and this is the last question. This is going to be your hardest question.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Tell everybody again, how do they find Diversion Hub?
Yes.
And just wrap us up.
Yeah. So you can come find us at Diversion Hub, 1200 Linwood. We're in Oklahoma City. We're in Norman. We're in El Reno. You can call us. You can go to our website and send us an email on info@Diversion Hub. We check those regularly. If you have a loved one in the jail, we check all of our inquiries regularly. Call us, have grace with us. We are busy, in the sense that we are not just twiddling our thumbs, we're serving. And so if you haven't gotten through, call me. email me, come up to Diversion Hub, talk to your attorney about ways that you can also get resources and services. If you don't believe in this work, still come through. Everyone deserves to have their voice. And so, again, I'm accessible always. It would be a pleasure and an honor for me to walk you through what we do at D-Hub. So come find me.
Meagan Taylor, let me just wrap up by saying this.
Thank you.
We appreciate the partnership
Thank you.
between OCJR and the Diversion Hub. But more importantly, we just appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you.
OCJR, of course, looks to end mass incarceration. However, we don't deal with direct services. You do, and we
Yeah.
appreciate it. I know that is what you do is where the Lord is
Yeah.
meeting people where they
Yeah.
are.
It takes
And
everyone.
It
Yeah.
takes everybody, and so I just want to thank you so much
Thank you.
for just doing what you do and being so passionate. And I want to thank our listeners, and they can tune in on to this podcast, Unintended Consequences, on any of your listening, your podcast listening software. So we're grateful to have you, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much.